Okay, so once you're in Mudbox, if you do have any errors, they are really annoying if to work over. So you could go under Mesh, or sorry, Display, not Mesh, and there's a little checkbox called Mesh Errors. You just turn those off and ignore them like they don't exist, which is really nice. So, quick overview in Mudbox. If you hold Alt and left click on your mouse, you can rotate. Alt and right click is zoom in and out, and oh god, and then Alt and middle mouse button is pan. So basically, all of the movement and navigation is all done while holding Alt. So nice and easy. It's Mudbox is a pretty simple and kind of bare bones program for high poly modeling, which is nice at times. Definitely ZBrush is way better. Way more options, but in that sense, there's a lot more to learn. There's toolbars everywhere in ZBrush. It's just left, right, top, bottom, inside, outside, just options and tools and menus and stuff. So again, lot to learn, but way better. Definitely, the industry standard. But again, Mudbox is still pretty good for what we want to do. So anyways, that's that. One of my favorite features in Mudbox is the layers up on the top right. So there's three little panels you have here. There's layers, object list, and viewport filters. So if you go under layers, by default you're on your just high body or whatever you call it. That's what mine's called. There's a little like plus sign next to a paper. If you make that, that's going to make you a new layer, very much like Photoshop. The nice thing about layers is you can start painting on these layers. You can just do whatever you want, right? Mess up your mesh. And then what you can do is you could always just hide that layer. You can delete that layer if you don't like what you've done, or you could tone down the strength too if you want to put it down to like 50% and you want to make all those changes just a little bit more subtle. It's nice like that. So let me just delete this layer, make a new one. That way I can paint on this guy without anything too crazy. Now I'm going to use my tablet just because I don't like carpal tunnel. I know some people really like using their mouse for things, and some things the mouse is better for, like stamping and certain stuff, but definitely if you're going for the long haul in your career, start using a tablet. Our artist at work uses a tablet in Max while he models, which is crazy. It's insane.
Still don't understand how it does that.
No, it's magic. I don't really get it either, but he swears by it. So he uses a tablet to model, like in Max and stuff too, just to select and move things around and all that. It's just like the mouse, right? I mean, it's just point and click, but it's just a different feeling, so you just gotta get used to it. Okay, so anyways, so you can do the same thing while holding Alt. You can move around on your tablet to rotate and do all that fun stuff. If you set up your pen correctly, you can zoom in and out and stuff like that. I don't think mine is set up correctly, so so I got to switch over to my mouse when I do stuff. All right, so first things first, we're doing metal stuff, so you don't have to go any too crazy. So bottom left is all your different brushes. So you have your Sculpt brush, which just sculpts, right? You just make whatever cool snaky things. Smooth will smoothen your stuff out if it's getting too hard. Again, my computer does not like it. It's a pretty high poly mesh, so the smooth is probably not going to look very interesting or effective. Grab will let you just grab parts of the mesh and move it around. Pinch, I really enjoy pinch. What pinch will do is it'll take all surrounding geometry within the brush and squeeze it into a small point. So really nice if you want to make harder edges and things like that. You might have to up the strength on that. Over here is your strength and size, and we'll talk about some shortcuts for that soon too. Anyways, there you go. If I wanted to pinch this down.
Is it like N for strength?
Huh?
N?
Yeah, it's B for brush and M for strength for some reason, yeah. So that's the pinch tool. Really nice. Will definitely really good for like cloth and other organic stuff or stone or whatever. I really like it. Flatten will let you flatten down a mesh if you've added a lot of noise and you want to just kind of smooth it out into like a nice flat section. Foamy brush will just kind of add stuff on top. It's kind of like the Sculpt, but a little bit different. Just kind of pushes and pulls and adds. Spray, repeat, I don't even, whatever. Imprint is quite nice. So imprint will, you can select a stamp. Let's say if we selected this guy over here. Imprint, if you click and drag, will show you this, whatever texture you're going to be imprinting. And when you let it go, it will stamp that on there for you. So really nice to use a lot of these brushes if you want to add some nice quick details. We'll talk about why things look like shit and all that in a second. But so that's imprint. Wax is really cool. Wax will let you take off parts of your mesh or add. So imagine if you had layers of wax that you could just kind of line on top of things. That's kind of what it'll do. I quite like this one. Scrape will kind of do the opposite, where it'll start scraping down some stuff. I really like, this is probably my favorite brush in Mudbox. Really nice for things like rocks and stones, and again, a lot of this stuff's meant for organic stuff, but still pretty cool. Fill, let me see if it'll do. Fill will try and fill up whatever cavities or things you have. So if I want to fill this thing up, I'll just use the fill brush, and it'll try its best to kind of, smooth that out. I could use the flatten tool, try and flatten this back down. Sometimes it does not work well. Yeah. We have the knife tool. Knife tool is quite nice if you want little gouges and things, really sharp, gougey things. Smears, kind of like the smudge brush in Photoshop. You have the bulge tool, which I quite like. It just kind of bulges things out. It's definitely way too strong. So if you just want to give things a little bit of girth, you can do that. Amplify will try and take what's already there and just kind of amplify it, make it a little bit stronger. And then there's freeze, mask, erase if you want to only work on certain parts. So I made a mess of this mesh, which is fine because it was not on the layer. So I've totally destroyed my mesh. I thought I made a new mesh, but I did not, which is totally fine. If you ever do that, just bring in the mesh again. It's really not a big deal, especially when you first started. So that'd be a nice thing. If I had a layer, I could just delete this layer like I did before, but I apparently forgot to make a layer. So let me just delete this mesh here. Actually, I think I already saved a scene before. So let me just pop that open. Of course, there's no recents for some reason. Don't save. All right. So we'll give this a little bit of time to save. We'll talk about a couple other things. Loading stuff is fun. Alright, so we're back. Now I have a layer that I can actually sculpt on without the fear of God. So let's talk about a couple other things. So we kind of brought up stamps a little bit. So stamps, again, really sweet. You can bring in your own textures as well too, which is really nice. You can right-click or click on here, and you can do Add Stamp. So you can bring in whatever the hell texture you want. Really nice. But yeah, I really like this rock one for doing rocks. So again, what this one does is if we use something like the Imprint tool, click and drag, and it'll stamp it. Now the way it does it is it's a height map, so it's black and white. Dark means low, white means up. So if you take a look at this thing, any of the parts on this texture that are white get raised. Any parts that are gray will stay equal to where it is, like 50% gray will mean it won't push or pull your mesh up or down. And anything below 50% gray will start dipping underneath. So really nice way of adding, you know, hey, I want to add some friggin' plants, right? That looks terrible, but that's good because we'll talk about that in a sec. Oh no, didn't like that one. There you go. Look at that leaf. It's beautiful. So whatever you want. So that's really nice. But let's go back to something like Sculpt. So when you're sculpting, you're going to have your brush. You can be doing a lot of brush stuff. With the tablet, it's nice because you could do pen pressure, so you could do big and small and light and hard, which is really great. You could use the B button. If you hold it, this little thing will come up, and that will change your size. You can click and drag up and down, left and right, whatever you like. And M will be your strength, so you can watch it change on the right-hand side there too. So this will affect, you know, what that's like. Now the shape of your brush is determined by a couple things. You could do, if you do a stamp, it'll use that stamp as your brush, so add a little bit of roughness to it. If you go to fall off, this is kind of your main thing. So this is what your gouge or lift on your sculpt will look like. So if I do this block here, this means there's 100% the brush. So it's just going to be everything. Oh, let me turn my stamp off. Stamp and stencil. So it's just doing like 100% of that brush. If I do something like this with like a really steep fall off, you'll see here. If I look at this,
Come down compared to a hill.
yeah. So this gradient here from flat to highest point will try and mimic this line here. Whereas if I do this one, it will try and mimic that up there. So you see it. This is trying to do like the bubbly. This is trying to go curve that way based on which one you select here. So these are quite important for how you're sculpting and what you're doing. So with the Sculpt tool and any other tool, if you sculpt regularly, it will push it upwards. If you hold Control, it will do a negative version of that brush. So if I want to cut in with the Sculpt tool instead of brush out, so without holding Alt is up, holding Alt will gouge downwards. So that's your quick and rough kind of thing there. Stencils will let you, again, stencil over stuff. I really like stencils too. So let's take a look at this guy. So what a stencil will do is it'll put an image on your viewport, and that image will stay locked to your viewport. But what will happen is if I align this to my mesh, let's say right here, and I go to my Sculpt tool, I make my brush a little bigger. When I sculpt over this, imagine I'm holding like a stencil over top of this mesh. And as I paint, it's going to try and use that stencil and fill it in. And it'll disappear as I start painting, but it'll come back. So let's do something a little bit more obvious, like this guy here. As I paint, you'll see it'll stencil in that image there. Right? And then I can move this around, and then I can start stenciling again. So it's kind of a cool, stampy, stencily looking thing there that you could do some interesting stuff. So if you had things like text that you wanted to slap onto something, stencil is really good for that, and whatnot. So really good in that sense. Okay, so that's kind of the basics. I probably won't go much deeper than that as far as like the tool sets go, because that's most of them. You can change the lighting of your mesh and the materials as well if you want to view your stuff in a different light, if you will. Let's try to stencil off. So I could put on my lighting to be a little bit more dramatic. Sometimes it helps to visualize your mesh a little better with nicer lighting, especially when you're doing organic stuff like characters and trees and rocks and things. Apparently it takes a long time, so I regret that decision too.
Regret immediately.
I regret a lot of things immediately. It happens. Okay. There we go. So now I have this like white purplish lighting, not really doing me a lot of favors right now, so I'm probably just going to put this back to the default. But you do have lighting options if you would like them. Oh, my mesh is only like 6 million polys. That's not bad. Yeah. There you go. That's a little better. It's still a little kind of shiny and stuff, but sometimes having these like dramatic lighting scenarios kind of help you view your mesh in different lights. I get it. And then You could also change materials too, so if you wanted to make your crate just crazy chrome, I believe you have to have your object selected, or it's working on it. Might be working on it. Oh yeah. Oh god.
Crash.
No, it's probably just thinking about its life. Come on, Mudbox. Hey, you did it. There you go. So I have a super reflective material on here, which looks really terrible. But anyways, oh, you can do like a cool Cartona one. Okay, I'll stop wasting time with these materials. Go, go, go.
Substance, this is kind of why I like this substance painter a little bit. It's just it's a little bit nicer. It's similar to Mudbox, but you can't really sculpt in detail.
Yeah, so I mean, Substance, for environment art, Substance is the way to go. All right? Substance or Quixel, honestly, we're learning Mudbox in case you guys really need it for stuff, or ZBrush. That's mainly going to be reserved for like character stuff and really organic things.
Yeah.
Most people, it seems like they just do work directly in Substance the whole time, from the few like tutorials and things I've been watching. And I don't blame them. I mean, you can make stuff really modularly in Substance. I watched this one where a guy made like a really nice set of bricks, and it was all like he was using Designer, so it was all just interesting variables of how the bricks are broken up. And he's like, yeah, if I just want different sized bricks or the same types of bricks but just a new variation of it, it's like I just go back in, I change a couple settings, and then I'm done. Right? He's like, otherwise, if I did this in Mudbox or ZBrush, I would have to go in and resculpt everything to match whatever I wanted it to be, right? It's like, and then it's another, you know, few days worth of work instead of a couple hours of just tweaking some stuff, right? So definitely for environment art, I can see why people are pumping out so much great work so fast these days on games like Uncharted and all that. It's because the tools are getting really, really good. So, okay, anyway, so that's a quick little thing about lighting and whatnot. So we talked a little bit about layers. There's also the object list here. So by default, you'll have all your different perspectives, your lights, that it does by default. And you'll have your mesh. So if you click it, it will make your mesh yellow. You don't have to have a mesh selected to work on it. But the nice thing is, if you do bring multiple meshes, like if I brought on my little handles from this guy too, you would see the multiple objects in here, and I could, under this eyeball here, I could click one of these little circles and hide, again, whatever it is I'm working on. So that's kind of the sweet thing about the object list and whatnot. And then under viewport filters, once we get there, don't crash. All right, and then under viewport filters, you could turn on and off really fancy stuff like ambient occlusion, you know, which looks cool, or depth of field. If you really have a really awesome computer and you just want to work on everything ever all the time, you know, put on some sweet depth of field and the tone mapper and whatever. I mean, it's mainly meant for screenshots, but you can work with it too if you really want to. Okay, so that's kind of the basic tools that are out here that will just get you some basic modeling and stuff like that. So now that we kind of know those, we could start finally sculpting.